Welcome, everyone.
Welcome to episode 2 of the 5 a.m. grind.
Welcome, everyone. We've got an awesome podcast in store for you today. So the title of today's podcast is Buyer Beware.
Interesting. Sounds interesting already.
Yeah, and before I get into the questions that we kind of are going to be discussing, I wanted to give you a little bit of context as to what brought us to these questions and the overall podcast. So earlier this week, I came across an article, and it was, so for those of you who don't know what I do, I am a lawyer practicing out of Mississauga, Ontario, which is somewhat near Toronto, and predominantly I do real estate. Real estate means that I'm helping clients buy, sell, refinance their homes. So I had an article come across my desk the other day, and basically, in that article, two individuals who had a mortgage out with a big lender, and they had to break that mortgage to buy another house because somebody got another job, and they were moving. And because they sold that house and broke that mortgage, they had an obscene fee, which is like $50,000 or something like that.
What?
Now
that sounds ridiculous.
It was insane, and it's surprisingly, for a lot of people, it's a surprise. For me, we've seen enough of these deals come through our firm, where individuals are breaking their mortgages and they're getting these huge penalties. And it's not like it's unavoidable. The reason is for something like this is that a lot of these mortgage, like the people when they're taking out a mortgage, they're looking at the lowest rate. And often enough, when you get the lowest rate, it's a closed mortgage. There's all these crazy terms that if you break it too early, you're going to get a penalty. And the mortgage brokers are often helping their clients, will give them that information, but clients don't like to listen. They just are skeptical. They're thinking maybe this person doesn't understand. I want the lowest rate, even though you could tell them in the long run, paying 10 more basis points, which equates to maybe $50 more a month, is going to save you money as opposed to taking anything from you. So a lot of these people are skeptical. So that's what I wanted to kind of talk about today.
Yep.
That's a buyer beware. The questions that we wanted to answer, right, was why are individuals skeptical of the advice of others?
Yeah.
Should we enter new relationships with skepticism or trust? When is it okay to trust the advice of another? And what should you do to bring down the guard of a skeptic? Mm-hmm. So all of this kind of revolves around basically this scenario, and it happens often enough. And if you were just to pull back away from just the mortgage example, any kind of professional often enough feels this, where your client is questioning whether you know what you're doing, or they feel like they know more than you. And so why don't we kick this off? Let me ask you this question.
Yeah. Yep.
Why are individuals skeptical of the advice of others, or even professionals? Not just anyone, but they're skeptical of the advice of professionals or people who have a demonstrated knowledge base in a particular field.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the reason is this is somewhat human, maybe. You know, people in general are sort of skeptical of a new person that they meet because they don't know them. They haven't really built a relationship. So I think in general, individuals are just naturally skeptical. And I would add to that, in today's day and age, we actually live in the information era, right? Yeah. So everybody thinks that they can just look up something online and become a self-proclaimed expert in literally every single field. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. I read on Google, blah, 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 this, right? They almost somewhat challenge what an expert would say. So I think it's twofold. Maybe it's a bit of a human instinct, and then the other instinct really is this plethora of knowledge makes you think you're smarter than you actually are.
Well, yeah, cases. And I agree with you. You see a lot of instances where individuals would come, even in my legal practice, where they'll say, well, I read A, B, and C. Can't you do X, Y, and Z? The reality is that in particular situations, you can. Yeah. But maybe it doesn't apply to you. Yeah. Right? Or maybe there's this new information that you should consider. Yeah, right?
Or maybe XYZ only applies to certain situations or certain times.
Well, are you skeptical when you...
It's
kind
a
of
good question.
situations?
I was asking myself that question when you actually posed it to me. Usually, to be honest, I am. I am a little skeptical, to be honest. And the reason for that is it's sort of similar. It's more of the human instinct. It's not that I don't trust someone, but if I don't know you, I'm naturally going to be slightly skeptical before being able to trust you. And I think in the past, I've been burned a couple of times.
Is that why?
Yeah. So it's made me naturally a little more skeptical about
Well,
people in general.
before you were burnt, were you trusting at that
I was
point?
very trusting. Yeah, I was pretty gullible, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the fact that I've sort of I've gone through the experience, etc. It's made me a bit more skeptical. But in the beginning, I was very trusting. Like, let's say when I first started my career, very trusting. Very, I guess, naive in some way.
Well, I mean, I guess for me,
Yeah.
and this kind of goes into our next question: why are individuals skeptical? I mean, should we enter new relationships with skepticism or trust?
Yeah.
For me, I wouldn't say I am skeptical, but I don't trust people right away either.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in the middle zone.
Okay.
Right? So if you say something, I will treat it with openness,
Yeah.
but I'm not immediately going to push back and think that this person has a certain angle.
Yeah. Or you
there's
give him a chance.
give
You
him a
give him a
chance.
chance. That's
I think you do too, no?
I don't know,
I-
man.
are
I'm
you-
naturally skeptical. Maybe I would give someone a chance, but
So if you're
I
like
would.
talk-
It's
yeah.
like a skeptical chance. It's
Yeah.
like, let's see if you can actually hop over this
So,
bar.
so he has to prove
Right?
something to you.
Yeah. For
Right.
me, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, I want that professional or that person, whoever they are, that they need to prove themselves to me. Because to be honest, for some professionals as well, you are paying them good money. If you're
Yeah.
parting with your hard-earned dollars,
Yeah, that's true.
you sort of have to prove it to me. I'm sorry, it's just it doesn't come free.
Let's go back to this mortgage side
Yeah.
then, where with a lot of mortgage brokers, it's commission based and
Yeah.
it's paid from the bank.
Right.
So you're not outlay. There's no outlay on your end.
Yeah.
Or there's no immediate. Obviously, it's baked into the costs and whatever.
Yeah.
But you have to
yeah.
get a mortgage. The rates are going to be similar.
Yeah.
And your payment's going to stay the same, right?
Yeah.
What the bank does on the back end is up to them.
Correct.
Would you then enter that relationship with skepticism, or would you be a bit more trusting?
So it's a good question. I think if you had asked me this question 5 years ago, before I went through a couple of these experiences that I just cited, I would have probably entered them no problem.
Yeah.
Especially in this case, you mentioned that they had a very low mortgage rate and
Yeah.
they got into the mortgage rate. They were attracted by the low rate that was sort of
Yeah.
advertised. I probably would have done it. But to be honest, if you do that to me now, I usually have that sense where I'm like, when something is too good to be true, generally it's too good to be true. There's got to be some sort of
There's
a
an
string
angle.
attached. There is
There's
an
an
angle,
angle.
there's something, etc.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes, like what I've done now, and I know we might cover this later on the podcast, I think what's important about professionals today, especially doctors as well, right? Whoever that professional is, always try and it doesn't hurt to get a second opinion, right?
Yeah.
If you see a low mortgage rate, well then ask someone who has experience that you know with mortgages and finance, whatever it is, so that you can get a second opinion as to whether or not you're missing something.
So when you say second opinion,
Yeah.
would you go to another mortgage professional, or would you go to somebody who probably like your dad, who's experienced enough with mortgages, maybe
Yeah.
your brother, maybe
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
else in the family or friends,
Yeah.
who has enough experience that you can potentially gather information, but they're not like competing with this professional that you've engaged with.
Right. I think I would. I would try and see if I can find that level of expertise in my network. So that'd be parents, close friends, etc.
Yeah.
And see if they, I don't know, if I'm going for a mortgage, I try to find someone who works at a bank or in finance or, giving out mortgages and ask them my question. If I can't find that, then you know what? Yeah, I'd probably do what you said, and that is consult another expert
Yeah.
and see what they say. Because I think it's important to corroborate opinions and to sort of
Yeah.
get multiple opinions. But a lot of people, I totally agree with you. Like they just go after that one person. They're like, oh, he's got a low rate. He seems pretty good. Trust him. Just go.
I think that people, what I find is a lot of people have preconceived notions going into the relationship on these different things will equate to trust.
Yeah.
Right. Mortgage, for example, and I don't think it's just a one-sided thing. I think that the brokers have a bit of an issue and the clients do as well.
Yeah.
So whereas the clients, it's easy to measure the value that somebody's giving you when they're giving you a mortgage based off of just the interest rate, because you're like, if the interest rate's the lowest,
Right.
that means that this guy's done his work.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So that's one thing. The more nuanced things where it's like, how do you explain to somebody that, well, the bank's giving this rate because they know that 10% of the people who are going to take it out are going to break it
and
they're going to pay this
massive
much,
fee.
and then it's going to cover the profitability for everything.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you explain that? And in that sense, I would blame maybe the mortgage brokers who may not be able to convey that message in the best possible way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it really depends on the broker as well. Is there a lot of business? Are they giving enough time to everyone? I think for the most part, I do feel professionals do try to give that time. And for the most part, I do feel that individuals do try to figure things out. But I feel like there is often skepticism, or you could say like a paranoia.
Yeah. Do you think
Just a paranoia that you're going to be taken
Do you
advantage
think
of.
it's rigged? I know I say rigged quite. I'm using it loosely here, but do you think sometimes it is rigged in the sense that the incentives of the professionals aren't necessarily aligned with their customers and clients? So in this case, right, client comes in, they want a mortgage, they see the low rate, the mortgage broker's like, you want this low rate? Go ahead, take it, right? They don't tell them about the prepayment penalty. Right.
Yeah.
And I understand sometimes it's not a required disclosure, but it's certainly nice to tell your clients, hey, by the way, if you're thinking of selling your house in 3 years, you might get hit by this big penalty. Do you think they are liable to tell their clients that?
They do. No, they are liable, and
Okay.
they do tell them, but it's more verbiage than a number. So if I tell you I don't know the exact verbiage, but it's going to be
Right.
like your interest rate differential and the amount of timing that's remaining on your mortgage, and that's
Yeah.
we're going to calculate a number based on that. You're not going to really know how big or small that number is.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is that psychology, but I do feel like, I'll give you one example.
Right.
Variable mortgages have always pretty much outperformed fixed mortgages. Yet I think 70% of mortgages taken out are fixed rate mortgages.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
because people have this predictability. It's more psychological.
Yeah.
The variable rate is moving up and down. And
They
even though
they
the
like to have the
NDFLS
certainty that a fixed rate
Yeah,
offers.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like for them, when they're taking out a mortgage, they're like, my certainty, I don't want to pay it's basically an insurance premium
Yeah.
by maybe going for a higher rate that doesn't have that penalty,
Yeah.
right? Versus it's an insurance premium that you're paying along. You basically don't want to pay that insurance premium. You want to go for the lowest rate.
Yeah.
And in exchange, you're telling yourself, well, this is not going to happen to me. I'm not going to be one of those people. And 9 times out of 10, that's right, even in a good market. But
Yeah.
when you've got like COVID happening and all these other things and a lot of people losing their jobs, then you're definitely going to have more people defaulting and more people are going to be owing this money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I definitely feel like, and I think that the penalties are on fixed rates more than variable. If you go variable is I think 3 months interest.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I'm getting into the details of this stuff.
No,
but
it's
it's a
just
lot
nice.
less,
It's
right?
interesting. Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like more psychological that
Yeah.
I want to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah.
my thing is, forget about the interest. Forget about even the fixed. And I would say it is also in the best interest of the mortgage broker to give their client a variable rate. Reason being that in the future, if the rates drop, or if there is a more, lucrative mortgage or more interesting or enticing package,
Yeah.
they can easily refinance their client. It's easier for them to refinance the client.
Right.
So their interests are in line in that. But often enough, the clients just feel like, no, this person may be getting something by me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
Interesting.
biggest thing.
I think people in general are just scared of getting screwed over, right? Is that why you think people are skeptical as well? In general, like they choose a fixed rate because
Yeah.
it's more predictable.
Or-
They're like, oh, like I don't want to be that one person, which you said is usually doesn't happen that often, but that one person that gets screwed over because variable rates are higher than fixed rates,
Yeah.
right? At the risk of avoiding that, they'd rather pay more money overall rather than just going for something that's variable. That could be
It's-
cheaper.
Yeah, it's penny wise, pound foolish, I think.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
not like they see something in front of them. I'll give you a good example. At our law firm, for services to purchase a house, it's $9.99 plus HST and disbursements, and to sell a house, it's $7.99
Right.
plus HST and disbursements. Now, at the end of a lot of the engagements, a lot of our clients would be like, well, they'd want to save $50 here, $100 there. Again, there's competitive forces that are pushing prices down, but at the same time, you need to be able to charge enough to have a good level of service provided. Do you really want somebody who is who is looking at the title of your house to see if there's debts on your house, to see if the person selling the house, they really own it? Do you really want to go to the professional who's taking care of that and try to argue it down for $100? Right?
Yeah.
Like it shows that where you're kind of putting the value. Do you value the service or like an extra $100? Wouldn't you, like personally, if I was going to a professional, I would be happy to pay an extra $100 if my house is on the line here.
Yeah,
and houses
it's like a big purchase.
It's the biggest asset for most Canadians.
Yeah, to buy a house. That's absolutely true.
Their net worth.
Yeah. It's tied up in your home. Yeah.
Right? So now, are you gonna argue over $100? And that kind of skepticism, I think, goes too far.
Yeah.
Right. Like I understand you have to be prudent in where you're spending, but you also have to be intelligent in spending in the right places. Right. People you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
How many people don't care that they are buying an extra TV on their credit card?
Yeah.
All right. But when it comes down to this, they're arguing for an extra $100.
Yeah, for the lawyer fees.
So it makes no sense to me, right? And to get that skepticism, to I guess get rid of their skepticism, it takes a lot of energy, and often enough, we find that we're doing work that is not related to the legal field, but it's more kind of babying the client,
right?
And that just adds more costs.
Yeah,
so it's like a circular logic where the more I'm trying to baby this individual to understand for them to understand where the costs are going, the more the costs are increasing.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So then
really
let me turn it to you then. When is it okay to begin to trust the advice of another?
Of a professional?
Yeah. When do you turn?
When do I? Yeah, I'll put it to when do I trust? Yeah, very personally, to be honest. So I mentioned obviously that I'm usually kind of skeptical. I sort of give people a chance, but I sort of see how they perform, then evaluate accordingly and go with the service or choose not to. I think it's okay to trust the advice of someone else once you've given them a chance to prove themselves out a bit. Then I would trust that person. But I mean, when you do say, and I don't know, maybe I might be contradicting myself a little bit here, but whenever I do purchase a house or something quite expensive, I do value the advice that a lawyer would give me, right? Because it is to protect myself. And if you're going to do a title search, cover insurance and whatever it is, other legal liabilities, I think that's definitely money well spent, right? But I mean, let's move it along to someone else. Let's say it's another real estate professional, right? It's an agent. I don't know. I sometimes like to see what an agent would show me, what kind of home, like how hard do they work for me before being like, okay, I'm ready to, I don't know, sign up with you and go like exclusive or whatever.
Yeah. So let's, what if we step back from a purely, I guess, real estate perspective to you're starting a business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who should you be skeptical of for advice? And when should you turn that around and turn it into trust? Right.
So who should you be skeptical of? I think when you're always being told, generally my alarm bells go off when sometimes, let's say I'm going to a lender and I need a new business loan.
Yeah.
Right. And they usually tell me, here's the option, here's the rate I can give you. And I'm the guy on the other side tells you this is the best rate you're going to get. Whenever somebody sort of says something like that, I'm like, I don't think so. I think, I'd like to check it out and verify that.
Okay, so when would you? Oh, so is that how you're going to build that trust? Like, I guess my next question is, when do you then trust that?
I think if I do my research, right, and find out that he's definitely the lowest, then 100%. That's when I trust the person. I have confidence in them, and I go through.
Well, so then that's the work that you're putting in.
Yeah.
What can that other person do to build that trust with you?
I think what they could do is, instead of just saying, I am the best rate available, I have the best service, like tell me or show me why that is, right?
Okay.
Like maybe I sometimes help find comparisons between competitors and different firms and different mortgages or lenders to be quite helpful when they say, here's our suite of services, here's what we provide, here's what the competition provides, right? That sometimes is quite helpful with the purchasing decision, and just for me to trust them.
Yeah, they're kind of doing the legwork for you instead of you going home
instead
and
of me doing all the
that.
research, because I'd have to do it anyway. Why don't
Yeah.
you do it in front for me and then just seal the deal? Then you have my business.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't necessarily always. So again, I'm not going in with a purely skeptical outlook. When I go,
Yeah, you said you're more trusting.
I wouldn't
you
necessarily trust, but I don't like. I wouldn't say this person is right, but I wouldn't say they're wrong. I'm kind of in the middle.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
not like it's like a no man's land.
I guess I'm more of like I don't trust this guy.
Yeah, like I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying, and I'm trying to understand your perspective and where you're coming from.
Right.
And then I will try to find reasons to trust you.
Okay.
Right? To give credibility to what you're saying.
Okay.
And this type of stuff I do for that to happen is I'll ask the other person questions. How long have you been in the industry? Right.
Yeah.
How many clients do you help out in a day, right? What's kind of the more difficult situations that you've been in,
Right.
right? And how did you kind of like? It's almost
I see.
a bit
So
of an
it's sort of
interview.
Yeah. You're pre-qualifying them. I
Yeah.
actually like that.
Because then,
That's a nice
like,
approach.
if you have like, if that person is like really like in the industry and they have a lot of experience, they're gonna have no problem answering any of those questions. If somebody came to me and asked me like, what's the most difficult transaction you did last week? I'll give you a really messed up one, and I'll tell you exactly what I did to get over it.
Yeah.
If you ask me how many transactions I've closed, I'll give you the number.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, it's gonna be, and you'd be able to tell, right, by talking to me, whether I know something or not, or whether I'm on the ball or not.
Right. Yeah. I like
So
that.
that's kind of like that's what my kind of thing is, and if they don't answer it correctly, again, I don't necessarily. I'm skeptical of them, but I'm not going to be trusting them right away. Now, like we're like, okay, this guy doesn't have the experience. Is there something else that I'm missing that I might be able to use to qualify this person and give him that trust? But again, I wouldn't be 100% in it.
Right. Got it. Interesting approach.
And I guess
I do like that.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of goes into my last question here.
Yeah.
Which is, how do you drop the guard of a skeptic?
Yeah. How do you live? Okay. So if someone walks into your law firm or whatever it is, a customer walks in, how do you make them less skeptical of you?
And I want to I want to approach this from not just a law firm,
Yeah.
just from a life perspective.
Yeah.
Right? When you're going out, you're networking, whenever you're doing something, right? People don't trust one another right away.
They don't.
Right?
That's absolutely true.
When you're going to a networking event, right, you're going to have to kind of qualify yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you drop the guard of a skeptic? And the reason this is such an important question, at least I think so, is that the faster you can drop that guard, and not just from a professional sales perspective, but from a relationship building perspective, that's one of the first things to start building that relationship. Because often when you're going to networking events or when you're meeting new people, everybody's guard is up.
Yeah.
They don't know what to think of you.
Right.
Maybe they're not buying a mortgage or taking out a mortgage, so there's not as much on the line.
Yeah.
But there is still that skepticism.
Yeah.
And the faster you can drop that guard, the easier it is for you to start building the next part of your relationship, which is that bond.
Right.
Right. At least you could say it's a first step, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is one of the fastest ways you've dropped the guard of a skeptic?
That's usually, honestly, it's tough to answer, but I'd say two ways. Number one, I'd say have a good conversation with them.
Yeah.
Usually trying to have just a normal conversation and making whatever conversation you have less salesy, right? It's like a genuine conversation. It's just about the person, getting to know them, understanding their perspective on life, whether or not they have a family, what they're into, what are their hobbies. I think that in general goes a long way, because at the end of the day, like you sort of mentioned, sales and some transactions are, first of all, they're human. They involve humans, right? So there is a very human aspect to all of this. So I think building that relationship goes a long way. And I'd go to my second point, which I sort of touched on earlier, and that is like sort of spoon feeding the information to whoever it is. Right? If they are concerned about your prices, you sort of show them why your prices are what they are. Like, what do you offer that's different than the competition, right? Which is why they'd be like, oh, okay, I'm getting this value here. I won't be getting this at another firm or somewhere else. That's why I would go with this guy. So I think I'd take that two sort of pronged approach where it's genuinely about building relationships, which I think everything is, and then informing your clients.
So I think with me, I have a little bit of a different perspective where the biggest difference between somebody you've just met and somebody you've known for 10 years is your comfortability, right? I'm going to be more comfortable with you than if a stranger walks through the door.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And I'm going to speak to you a certain way. Now, for me, it's more like I try to, even with strangers that I know, for example, with my clients that are just beginning to build our relationship, I will talk to them in a way that I've known them for the past 10 years.
Right.
Yeah. And that way it brings their guard down too, because the conversation is not as formal. You are speaking to them as a friend. There is a bit of a caveat to that, and that is the fact that often enough when you do speak comfortably with somebody, the other person might get more reserved, as in, who does this person think he is? They can't show themselves. So you got to really gauge, first of all, the person you're speaking to. A lot of people will reciprocate you being comfortable. And if they don't, then you can start off with the formality, but guide the relationship right into the comfortability. Because it's not that the other person doesn't want to be comfortable; they don't want to be comfortable so quickly. Because the proper stages haven't gone through those proper stages.
Right.
So then you want to bring them through those stages and get them comfortable to who you are and how you work. And once they know who you are and what you're about, they're gonna trust you more.
I actually have a good story about this, if you want to hear it. Right? So one of my clients that I actually do work for, when they sort of were about to hand their file and their business to me, I was talking to one of the CEOs, and he had a couple of questions. He was just quizzing my accounting knowledge, right? Now, mind you, he's not very good at accounting, but I think what he wanted to know was, like, since I'm the CEO and I know this, I want to know if you know it too, just to gauge and assess, right? So it's nothing, and it's nothing conniving or, you know.
It's fair enough.
He's not trying to, there's no hidden agenda. He's just trying to see, do you know your stuff? And then they're very trusting, right? And if you can answer those questions, and even if you don't know, you're honest about it, and you tell them, hey, I don't know, let me find out for you. And you give them some information, you deliver well, above and beyond what it is that they're looking for, I think they'd be willing to trust you.
And the other thing is that you answer those questions early on. So if you go through that interview process or whatever it is, where they're trying to understand your scope of knowledge, that's going to actually, it might seem like there's a lot of questions in the beginning, but there's less questions in the long run. No? Whereas they trust you. Now they're like, all right, just go do this. Right? Like, this is what you're, like, what we've hired your firm for. Now go complete this task.
It's so
As opposed to, is this being done properly? Where are you now? Right? Can I get an update? All of that.
Do you find that sometimes, like, even nurturing a relationship with a client, it takes time to develop that, right? Like, sometimes you want to land a client. Do you land them right away, or does it take time? Does it sort of, like, that trust builds slowly as you approach them again, you talk to them again, and then it builds into something?
I think it really depends. It depends on the individual. It depends on the type of client. So a lot of individuals they will go through that process and trust you sooner.
Right.
That's one thing. Now, but the other thing is also when you're working with an organization, the dynamics are a bit different because there's more stakeholders. So then even if a person on their own would be more trusting, they may be a bit more skeptical because their job is on the line, the promotion's on the line. They don't want to look like a fool in front of their colleagues and stuff like that. So they'll be a bit more skeptical. So there is, and your chances are you're not convincing one person in an organization. You're convincing 6 or 12 at the same time. So you're building that entire relationship. That's why it's like slower in that sense. But if it's like a smaller business where there's few stakeholders, 2, 3, 1, right? Like it's fairly easy to
do it. Right. Interesting. Cool.
I think that kind of wraps up
That wraps it up. A nice way to end this podcast. Good episode.
So, well, before we go, to wrap it up, what's the one thing that you would tell? What's your advice to a skeptic?
To a skeptic, I'd say, you know what? Give people a chance. Put them through a test. See what they come out. If you're happy with what they give you, trust them. Go with it.
I'm of the same mindset. Don't be naive, but be open-minded.
Cool. All right, we'll leave it there. We'll end it there.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.
care.
Until the next one.